One of the things I was the most curious about with FM22 is how my life, pretending to be an imaginary manager, would be made easier. So today, we're going to find out how. Hi guys, and welcome to another FM22 video. If you missed last night's one, we went over the data hub and all of that business, so I would assure you to go and check that one out as well, because there's some deep divey stuff in there. And also do be sure to check out the other videos created by other FM creators on the FM22 features. They'll all be linked all over the shop. And before we get into anything else, it is once again worth knowing that this, of course, was recorded on very early alpha of the game. But that said, as I said before, it still looks extremely polished. But just, bear that in mind. So, when it comes to quality of life updates in a game like FM, I'm just looking for little things that make my life easier. Just ways that things have been streamlined and new things that I notice along the way. So I figured the best way that we could really showcase that would be to just hop into a save from the very beginning, and I'll just take you through a season, essentially, incredibly quickly, pointing out anything that I really like that's new to the game, and all that lovely jazz that will just make your life easier when pretending to be a manager this year. So obviously we've already created our manager. You can select him from this menu as you always could before, but I really like that it actually now displays the attributes of the different managers that you have selected in here. Just makes it easier when trying to pick who you're actually going to use as your manager before each of your saves. I would say ignore the blue eyebrows, but it's not easy, is it? You can, of course, then still change it in here, though. Not the eyebrows. The eyebrows are for life. And if there are stadium changes going on, it will actually show it in here. So if this was Fulham, for example, you'd actually see that they're moving into the sort of newer version of Craven Cottage. I say moving into. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, in here, you'll now be presented with the option for the backroom staff meeting. However, that's where things start to take a slight turn, because that is a brand new sort of addition to the game this year. And you'll see what I mean in a sec. So before, there used to be a team report tab that would allow you to get your sort of general stuff. But now, things like squad death and that are actually under squad, which, it's simple things like that that just make things easier to find. Certain menus I found were buried before, but this is just a nice addition. Now, we're just going to plug in a tactic for now. The only reason I'm going to choose this back five system, because I actually don't think it works that well for binds players. Maybe it kind of does. It's just so we can sort of show off the lovely little wide centre-backness. Staff meetings. This is one of the big new things for this year. And we're going to jump straight into one and do it in its entirety, so you can kind of see exactly what's going on in these, basically. But you can schedule these as much as you like, or in case you just don't want to, you can also request it an inbox summary as well. So, bam! Here we go. So the first thing they want to say is basically that Thomas Muller is a suitable captain. Bam! Within the screen, we can just hit it. He's captain. Nice. Instantly actionable suggestions. And now we have a player trait authorization for Tanguy Nyanzu. Once again, click of a button, it's in. Same kind of stuff applies for coaching assignments. Now, this stuff will vary throughout the season as more and more things come up in different areas. Recruitment as well is useful when looking at player contracts as well. You can schedule after a meeting. Now, what that will essentially do is after the meeting has happened, you'll then get a summary of any things that maybe need to be actioned outside of this meeting and things like this. But in addition, you could just say, well, say I don't want to actually action this now. I want to wait another sort of couple of weeks to see what happens. You can set yourself a little reminder within here from 1 week, 2 weeks, and also 1 month as well, which is what I'm going to do here, so we can see how that works later. Same kind of stuff applies to here with sort of like high potential younger players that you want to give contracts to. But once again, we're going to schedule this one for 2 weeks. Come back to that one. A couple of options of players who want to be transfer listed, potentially because they're not going to re-sign their contracts. It does appear that's the case with Sula, which is annoying because he's one of the best centre-backs we have. But I guess for the purposes of this, we will place him on the transfer list so the clubs are alerted to his presence. As for Kingsley, why not, eh? But within this as well, you can also ask other staff members for their opinions on certain topics, and you might get a slightly different answer depending on, as you can see there, actually. Now, obviously, these aren't actionable. It's just kind of your staff going, yeah, these guys are quite good. Keep an eye on them. Kind of how you would have seen them in the development center, which is essentially what this is. So you could acknowledge, you can move on. You can also skip to certain sections if certain stuff doesn't tickle your fancy. In addition to that, within there, you can also find some suggestions for staff members to bring in. Now, obviously, we don't have a complete staff right now, so one thing we are going to do is just schedule all of these after meeting. So there we go. After that is done, you'll then get a big summary of all the things that you are planning to do. You'll get some stuff for here, which we'll see in a second. Essentially, if you enjoyed recruitment meetings on last year's game, this kind of takes that same style and approach, but brings it into the sort of the staff options. And after the meeting, you'll immediately be presented with this, which is essentially a giant list of things that you can action straight off the bat. And now, one of the things I really quite genuinely like about this is before you would get sort of suggestions about staff members, but they would almost sort of come out of the blue, whereas you'd have now had that staff meeting, so you could actually see why they were recommending those particular staff members to you. In case you're interested in what the regen faces look like, here's Yanis Gagan, who is a Frenchman, one of the staff members we're potentially looking at as a sports scientist. Something that's also worth knowing, as I'm sure you will see when I show you some more of these staff meetings, is that you'll also get options to train players on their weaker foots, which before was, particularly on last year's game, was slightly more complex than it maybe needed to be, but now your staff will often ask you to train players on their weaker foot a little bit more, and it's now actionable with a click of a button. And one of the things I noticed when I was managing Fulham and I was doing the staff meetings is because we were failing our FFP requirements for the championship, there was a separate section basically saying, these guys are high value, maybe we should sell them to meet our FFP environment. So I thought that was pretty cool. In addition, it's also going to make more use of the technical director role, because the better he is, the better suggestions you're going to get when it comes to hiring staff on those particular screens, and more information to back it up. Okay, so we just had a loan bid for Josip Stanisic, and as you can see, firstly, straight off the bat, the loan offer is now way more detailed than it would have been before. I found often before, you'd often just be presented with kind of a simple, like, we will pay X amount of wages, but now, you know, they want to sort of structure this deal kind of interestingly, and right now I'm kind of happy to go with that, as they're basically giving us more than his full wage and a little bit of extras on top of that. So we're actually going to accept that offer and see if anyone else comes in to match it. And it just seems that transfers are more varied in general. The types of offer you're receiving from clubs for your players won't always just be, here's a flat fee. They'll often include more installments, which they tended not to do before, and that was more of a human player kind of thing. But I've now noticed that a lot of clubs will actually ask to try to buy your players using 6 different sets of installments, essentially. Just told the players that I was going to give youth a chance, and they're like, no, I'm sorry, that's not what we do here. Or should we just try and buy Haaland? Now, one of the other things you'll notice as well, just using Haaland as an example here, is the new transfer ranges. Now, one of the other things I like about this as well is that this figure will change depending on how well scouted the player is. But the thing I really like about the transfer ranges, more than things like that, is that one of the problems I've had in the past was that you'd be scouting younger players from sort of larger nations, and their value would be something like £10,000. But then you actually got to put a bid in, and the club would be like, yes, that'd be 150 million, please. Whereas now, you shouldn't in theory have that problem if you've got a decent scout on that player. You'll get a much more realistic answer as to how much the player is actually valued at. And that's really, really important when it comes to planning a transfer window and not having to wait until the last minute to figure that information out. In the meantime, we are actually going to set up this focus. Now, a general focus as well, you can actually set for that. However, priority focuses it's just more streamlined. Now you can tell exactly which focuses you're using at any one time because there's a different menu for each of them. Me likes that. Wow, we sure showed them. 9-1 against the second team, despite most of our team being missing. Also, they're some friendly lads, chill. Then, of course, as you would have seen in last night's Data Hub video, it then presented with the key findings, which can, I mean, we're not going to learn much from this particular game, but it will come in very, very handy when we actually get into some league fixtures. PSG wants Sula. Okay. So this will give you a little idea of something we could potentially work for as well. But ideally, we want to try to be pushing PSG as close to this value as we can. So I might just counter with 20 million straight off the bat here. Bite the bullet on that. But okay, of course they did. They're PSG. They don't care. I could have put the moon in there and they'd have gone, seems doable. Although now I'm starting to wonder if we could have got a little bit more. But yeah, as you can see, they were willing to pay 20 million up front in this particular case. But as you can see, again, they want to put more things in installments, which is fine for getting profit over a longer time. And it's just more realistic in general. Now, several different clubs have put in an offer for the same sports scientist that we were looking at before. And you can actually see that down here. So maybe he won't join us after all. So we've got a scout report back now on a few different players coming through potentially. Now, particularly this guy, Riedel Baku here, a sort of, well, I mean, he can play everywhere essentially, but you can see again, you can see the max asking price, but also the transfer values. Now, these ranges will be wider on players that we know less about, but you'll also notice that now the recommendation has been changed from a number to a more graded letter. And that might seem like it's giving you less information, and it's true, it is, but I actually prefer that because I think that maybe before it was a little bit too specific to the point where it made it a little bit too easy in Gamify, whereas now it feels like there's more ambiguity to it where not every signing is guaranteed to be good. I think this is also going to make it important to try to keep good relationships with agents, because if you then approach a player, I've noticed this, and then try to stall on it after that, they'll start to dislike you, and it seems that they'll be less likely to give you information in the future. The agent won't always tell you everything that they have information on up front, particularly if they dislike you. Okay, so 2 weeks have passed. We're now back to another staff meet. Now, because this is further into the season, now these will obviously change throughout that. They've been able to get more information about certain areas of our team, more stuff on other areas. So let's do this one again and see what different stuff is there this time. So now that they've had a little chance to look at certain players in the club, they're going to give you suggestions about who should be taking set pieces and whatnot. Now, if I could, I feel like one area that I would like to see maybe slightly different, actually, is the ability to actually, instead of having to schedule this thing to after the meeting, be able to actually add him 2 free kicks right now with the click of a button, because that would be an excellent addition for me. Because at the moment I click this and I still have to do it manually afterwards, it just reminds me. That would be a really cool feature to be able to do that particular action from inside this meeting. And here is the reminder that I set before. As you can see, previously brought up here, which is good. It keeps coming back up in the meetings, which is what you want to see. You can also handle staff delegation from there too. You'll also see updates to do with things like player mentoring, player personality changes in here as well. Just got another scout report back. Guy here, Sekou Mara, a striker at Bordeaux. A- recommendation, very, very highly rated, it would seem, and it would be available fairly cheap. So I might try and put a bid in for him just so I can show you how the sort of the incoming transfers work. I'm just going to start a little bit lower and see what they say. But you can see that they are actually the team suggesting installments now. That's something I would have always had to do myself. Yeah, so as you can see there, it's not always going to be slap bang in the center of that transfer value screen. Like, we were recommended a value of 2.2 to 4.5, and we've ended up in getting him in total for the fee of 2.5 million, only $1 million of which is actually up front. So you can still work well within those ranges too, and it won't always be on the lower or higher end. And I think it will really depend on who you're dealing with on the other end, the type of negotiation that you come up against, and I really like that. Off we go then. So one of the first things you'll notice as well is that the ball and the touches just seem way heavier in a good way. It feels like the players are actually touching the ball and more contact is being made, and the collisions just seem better for the most part. I just think that the new animations do definitely make the players just look that little bit better, quite simply, and it just looks really, really good. You'll also notice when it comes to things like crosses being blocked as well, it's way more realistic looking. You'll also no longer be able to press for like a full 90 minutes really if your players don't have the stamina for it, because their passing will reduce in accuracy. The stamina will obviously take a hit there as we very nearly concede. The way the players are sort of looking for those passes, it just looks so much better when they do stuff like that. Davies down this left-hand side now. Can we get a little opportunity at the start of the second half here? Can he whip it through? He does, and it's an own goal at the back post there. But I think that was, yes, it was Matthias Hinter with the own goal. You'll also notice that the faces show on, it just looks so much better in big text like that. I really, really like that. Something that will also show up on this screen is when you score a goal that isn't an own goal, the assister will also show up underneath this. It's just little stuff, but I really like it. So one of the other cool new things is the deadline day feature, and I think this is going to come in really handy, particularly for actually selling players, getting players off your books, because you'll be able to see on this menu, attracting interest, exactly which of the players in your squad, and you can see it's quite a lot as well, are attracting interest from other clubs. And it's a good way because you know that you're probably at some point during this transfer deadline day gonna get bids on these players. So you can see here now, we've got some agent offers, not players that we really want to maybe action right now, although Paredes potentially, but you can see now the agents are trying to ship these guys out, and these will change throughout the day. You might be able to pick up some absolute bargains on the final day of the transfer window just by looking through some of these agent offers potentially. And the squad registration page too, I really kind of like this too because, well, it's just way easier to see who's actually here and who's out. Another cool little thing you'll notice as well is on the sort of match summary screens, you'll actually see the XG stats in here with the shots and the possessions. It's just nice to be able to see that at a quick glance. Also, we smashed Eintracht Frankfurt 7-1, so that's good. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to show you as well is the way youth intake previews and youth intakes themselves have changed slightly as well. So obviously you get youth intake preview, it looks massively different, but we're going to have a look at it in the development center instead. So now, instead of the sort of random green lines that you would have got before, the green and the yellow, you know how it goes. You now get a slightly different approach to things right now, which will also show you a star rating. It's a little bit cut off here, but remember again, early build. And now you can sort of see exactly where in your team those players are actually coming through from, and I really, really like this a lot. So you can see really right now we have a forward who's considered a fine prospect and 3 attacking midfielders to keep a close eye on. So we are stacked in the front lines, but nothing really coming through. In fact, we've actually got G-rated wingers. I've never even seen a G before. That's incredible. So yeah, I look forward to see how this actually pans out when we get our youth intake. Okay, so we now have our youth intake, and as you can see, once again, we get a slightly different sort of menu layout for it, quite simply. Now I'm going to again show you it on the development screen so we get a bit more of a better idea, but you can see good youth intake. Nice to see. So the same stuff is now available on this screen. You can see that the striker, I'm guessing, that was in question is actually not showing up for us in here this time around. I'm guessing maybe by forward minutes. So we got like we got Klaus Welsmuller, we got Colin Kay, we got Dietmar Zengera. There's options in there, particularly this Colin Kay, an American lad who I'm guessing is one of the many attacking midfielders that they talked about. Maybe Adekor was in there as well. If I had to guess, I'd say that possibly Ozan Terzi was the striker that they mentioned potentially. Maybe he's just been downgraded slightly, but you see you can offer contracts to those players in there too. There's some decent talents. It's all kind of separated out quite nicely, and I just think it's a really nice way of displaying these things, so you'll get a much better idea. I just love this particularly as well, just to give you an idea of where those players are actually coming through. It's just a much better way of displaying this information. Let's have a little look at the best one, Colin Kay. Yeah, he do be quite good, don't he, really? Probably a future American international in there, I would probably say so. So, I don't want to take up too much more of your time with this, so I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. Hopefully some of the little quality of life updates to the game have intrigued you and piqued your interest about FM22. So, if you have enjoyed it, drop a like on the video, that would be superb. Do be sure to check out the videos made by the other creators going out today, and of course the ones that went out yesterday too, including my own video. So if you've enjoyed it, drop a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe for all sorts of lovely stuff coming up when the full game is released. And yeah, I will see you guys very, very soon. Hold your gun, capybara, bye-bye.